In this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show, we are diving deep into the heart of empowerment. We're joined by the incredible Valerie Friedlander to explore what it really means to reclaim your personal power. Together, we unpack how to celebrate and appreciate our bodies, make intentional choices, and clear away the roadblocks to true empowerment. Valerie shares her unique approach, blending individual growth with an awareness of social systems that impact us all. We touch on everything from self-advocacy to nurturing curiosity, both for ourselves and for the next generation. Join us as we challenge the norms, explore the power of choice, and encourage you to reclaim your sovereignty. This episode is all about stepping into your power with intention and curiosity. Enjoy. Hi there. Welcome to the Empowered and Embodied Show. I'm Kim Romaine.
And I'm Louise Neal. We're two transformational coaches who are also fellow travelers on the path of growth and self-discovery. And we're inviting you along for the ride.
That's right. We're right here in the trenches with you, navigating the ups and downs of life. And each week we'll be sharing our own experiences, bringing you conversations with amazing guests, and exploring insights and strategies that have helped us find more clarity, confidence, and ease in our lives.
And trust us, we do not have it all figured out. We're learning and growing right alongside you.
So if you're ready to rise above the chaos, doubt, and confusion that sometimes life throws our way,
and step into a more empowered and embodied version of yourself,
then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again for another Empowered and Embodied conversation. I am one of your lovely co-hostesses, Kim Romaine, joined by my other lovely co-host.
Me, Louise Neal. That's me.
That is you.
I know. I'm really happy to be here today. And I'm super excited to have our guest.
Yeah, Valerie.
Yay, Valerie. And we're going to learn all about Valerie in just a little bit. But first, we want to start out this week, like we start out every week. What are we celebrating today? What are we celebrating?
I'm going to go first. I'm just going to jump in. I don't know if this is a celebration necessarily, but it's a lot of gratitude anyways that I have today for my health. I'm not feeling particularly great today. Fighting my very first bout with COVID knocked me out for several weeks. And I'm still really grateful and celebrating, I think, my comeback, feeling better and better every day now. And it just really made me pause and think about my health and what it was all about before I got sick. And that's just the place that I've been playing in lately, is just really, I think, celebrating my body, appreciating how it moves, even though it doesn't always want to. And napping is a big thing lately, but it's really about that. So even though I'm not feeling fantastic, I am celebrating my health. And I'm really, I don't know. I just really want this to be over, to be honest. But I'm doing great.
Louise, what's so interesting about that celebration is I remember back in April when we were on our retreat together and we were talking about partially about your human design. And in it, there's all of this stuff that ties back to both your intuition, but also your physical body. Mm. And this is one of those rare times that I actually hear you talking about your body and the gratitude that you have for it. So this isn't my celebration, but I am celebrating your gratitude for your body.
Yeah, we don't do that enough. Like, generally speaking, we don't celebrate our bodies. We're usually looking in the mirror trying to find faults, or we're upset about what's not working. Especially, I'm in my early mid 50s. It's like, ooh, that doesn't work the way it's supposed to, or the way it used to.
Where did that sag come from?
And it's like, whoo. but it's like, no more of that. No more of that. It's like, I really am like really embracing movement and what I can do with my body. So yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to jump in on that one because it resonates with what I am celebrating right now, which is I finally got my butt to the chiropractor after ages. And I'm one of those people who, if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist. And so if I don't set the next appointment, I just stop going. And so I'm generally at this point, knowing this about myself, really good about after the first appointment, I set the next appointment, but I didn't. And I was having some ear issues, but I was pretty sure it was related to my jaw. And because I went to the doctor and they're like, your ear looks fine. And I'm like, but it doesn't feel fine. So I just had this feeling that there was like a muscular thing. So I went to the chiropractor and they were like, yeah, you are all locked up. Everything is hot. And I'm like, thank you. But no. but no, really. So,
I mean, we don't complain when somebody says that to us, do we?
I was like, well, I mean, thanks. But I got the adjustment and I was like, oh, yep, I was right. So I'm going to be thankful here for taking care of myself and also for my intuition, because I had this feeling that like part of me was like, should I make an appointment with an ENT? You know, do I need to like look at my eustachian tube and all that? I'm like, I feel like it's this. I need to listen to my body. So I went to the chiropractor and I am glad that I did. So celebrating those things.
Absolutely. And that self-advocacy is so huge because we're not taught to do it. Hopefully we're teaching our kids to do it a little more than we were taught. And that's not our parents' fault. I mean, sure, we could go the blame game, but it's not worth it. They didn't know, right? We have this ability to know a little bit more and to give that gift to our children. So I actually, every night, since our kiddo was 3 and she's 14 now, ask her a series of questions. And the last question I ask every night is, what is one thing you appreciate about your body? Because I want her, particularly, right, as a coming of age young woman, somebody who identifies in a female body, what do you actually appreciate about it? And the things that she comes up with, I love, because it's not like, ooh, I like how this curve, or I like my hair, or I like my eyes, right? That's what I think about myself. She goes, I like when it tells me that I'm tired and I need to rest. Like, wow. So I'm going to just jump in here with this. I am going to say that I am celebrating being a mom. I do that a lot. Like personally, I celebrate. I have my little dance parties. I'm like, ooh, good mom moment. But our kiddo has been through it this year. And she's 14 and she still keeps coming back to me and is like, hey, mama, can you just help me with this? Can you just listen to me? Can you just stand by my side? And so that's a huge gift to me, and I am so grateful for it. And I'm going to actually pat myself on the back and say, hey, there's a reason for that. And I'm going to celebrate myself for showing up for that kiddo for 14 years. And I will, right, that's not going to stop anytime soon. I mean, this morning I asked her, because I was giving a talk earlier today, and I said, so if you could learn one thing from me, I was just curious, if you could learn one thing from me, right? You learn things from me all the time. I learn things from you all the time. But if you could learn one thing from me, what would be that thing? And she said, I would want to know how you show up in your sparkle all the time. I was like, what? First of all, what does that mean? And second of all, like, it sounds really cool. And what she meant was like, how do you own yourself all the time? So yeah, that's a very cool conversation to have with an adolescent, is how do you own yourself? How do you lean into your own sparkle, your own shine?
I love that question. The first question, by the way, I'm totally going to ask my kids that, just because I'm super curious.
Yeah.
And also I have a 13-year-old, And so those kinds of explorations are so powerful. Like, what does this look like for you to own yourself?
Yeah. And your 13-year-old is a son, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is, I would assume it'd be a different conversation, but I would love to hear how that goes, because I think it's, at least from my perspective, it's so funny. I cried when I found out we were having a girl. I was like, I don't want that. And then and now I'm like, wow, what a blessing, because I get to have these conversations with her. Louise, your kiddo is quote unquote out of the house. He's not out of the house, but he's in college. He's entering college. So like, what was it like for you when he was a teenager having these did you have these conversations with him?
Well, I think, what we're talking about is just being really curious about what our kids like, and it's kind of ties into our show title around empowerment, right? What do our kids like? Where do they feel empowered? Where do they feel like they're in choice? Because those are the questions that I think are so important to even ask, and not to assume that our kids feel that way all the time. And so, Kim and Valerie, like those questions to, right, preteens and early teens, that really is about like, where are you at in your empowerment journey? And what does that feel like when you are in choice, or right? Those kinds of things. I think it's important to talk about that. And I tried to talk about that with my kiddo. It's just him and I. And so we have some really interesting conversations, and I'm always fascinated by what he thinks he knows. And I say that with a little giggle, because it's true. Like those kids they feel like they just know it all, and how it comes out so confidently. I feel like my kiddo is really empowered all the time, at least with me. And so I want to encourage that, and I hope he takes it out into the world.
Yeah.
So I have two. I have one who's 13 and another who is 10, and they're both boys, and they have very different processing ways. So my older son is much more emotional, and he's very in touch with, you say he's a Pisces. He can really communicate about his emotions, and he's very empathetic. And so we have those kinds of deep conversations, and he has a lot of awareness, and we've done a lot of work around like what's yours and what's not yours, because I think that is a core component of empowerment, is being able to differentiate what is yours, what do you have power over, and what's not yours. I grew up with a lot of codependent patterns in my life with my family. And so unlearning codependency was a lot of being able to go, this is mine and that's not mine. I'm not responsible for your emotional state. I can be responsible for my impact, but I can't be responsible for your emotions. And being able to have that sense of, and being able to heal, like when I was bullied as a kid and like those sorts of things, and watching some of that play out with my son to help him understand, because nobody really explained it to me. I got the whole like, well, you can't be friends with everybody, so not everybody is going to like you kind of stuff. But no, I didn't really get the, hey, it's not your fault. Like them and their behavior is about them and not about you. It's about what they're processing, that they're taking it out on you. And so we've had a lot of those conversations to help him be able to separate, like, it isn't mine, but this is where I do have power. So we've been able to, like, we talk through stuff a lot. My younger son is much more embodied. He is very much like, he processes through his body, very different than the way. So I've had to like really recalibrate in terms of engaging with him, because he's physical and he's also a little tank. Like that's just, his body is just tank-like. And so having like his ability to articulate in words is much slower. He can draw things, like to be able to access what's going on emotionally, he'll draw it first, and then he can describe what he drew. but he can't just tell me in like right away. So like finding these ways of being able to communicate differently has been an exercise for me that I'm really grateful for, as well as for how we relate to each other and helping him access his own power in a way that he can process, helping him be aware of, when do I step in? Because he also has ADHD. And so I need to do a little bit more advocacy within the school system in some ways for him. And so allowing him to have agency over where I help and where I don't help, and where I need to say, you know what, as a responsible adult in your life, I need to step in here. But trying to allow him as much choice in these things as I can, so that he feels like he has power in his life, and not like people are just going to tell him what to do.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited to continue this conversation. I want to just pause for just a second to like introduce the world to you.
Oh, we haven't even done that yet.
We didn't do that yet. So we just dove right in. But I think as I do this, listeners, you'll understand, because I love sitting and talking with Valerie. There's just, I feel smarter every time I leave a conversation with you. And it's just, yeah. So, okay. So Valerie is a life business alignment coach and host of the podcast Unlimited, which is fantastic. And please go listen to that. She has over 20 years of leadership and personal development study, including coaching certifications, mediation.
Yeah.
Excellent. Me too.
Everybody always reads it as like meditation. I'm like,
it's mediation.
I have experience with meditation, but the training is in mediation.
As is mine, which is why I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, another thing we have in common. Yeah. Okay, mediation and facilitation training and business management experience. I'm going to throw in there that she also was a sociology major. So like, this is a very, very smart woman here. Spiritually and scientifically based, Valerie's work holistically supports her clients to develop a present and joyful life in harmony with their powerful work in the world. Her philosophy is rooted in individual empowerment with social system awareness. When she's not working with clients, you'll find her hanging out with her husband and, as she mentioned, her 2 sons, or working on an art project or nerding out over a sci-fi movie. Marvel?
Oh, that too. Yeah. No, okay. I mean, I was like, how do I consolidate? Because I'm a huge nerd on all the things, sci-fi, fantasy, comic books, you name it.
Okay. So,
but definitely I'm a more of a Marvel than a DC.
Okay.
Who isn't really?
Well,
only
but
the cool people.
That was true before Marvel became the cool
I was gonna say, but when did that start? Yeah, because if you don't know who if you don't know who Blade is, like I don't want to have this conversation with you, because then you're not actually right. Then you don't know Marvel. So where we were going with it, we were having this conversation around helping our children, particularly adolescents, in that place of empowerment, of leaning into. And so how do we, the 3 of us, because I know we all do this in our work as well, how do each of us lean into guiding somebody else into reclaiming their power? Because that's really what empowerment is, right? How do we guide them into reclaiming their power?
Yeah. Well, I will identify and clarify. I actually did an episode talking about empowerment, because I think that word gets thrown around a lot. We were talking about that. It was like people utilize the word like, I'm going to empower people. And I think when you say you're going to empower somebody, we're looking at structures. Like if you're talking, you can't empower somebody on a personal level. You can empower people when you're talking about systems and structures by, usually it's removing obstacles and not actually giving them something. It's like taking away the obstacles that are in place in the systems. That sometimes it's giving more information. Sometimes it's those sorts of things. When I'm doing the work, because I'm looking at it primarily from, I'm working with individuals, incorporating social systems awareness, we might look at where is your power limited? So like, what are the obstacles external to you that we need to understand? What are the system? What is the structure that we're navigating so that you feel empowered to make decisions in relation to that? Because too often we've internalized those systems such that, again, it's separating out what's mine and what's not mine. oh, I internalized that, but it's not actually mine. It was something I learned, like, I know you've talked about this before, imposter syndrome, which isn't actually about, it's not a you problem. It's a individual pathologization of a systemic issue where people have given you the explicit or implicit message that you don't belong. You are an imposter. So when we can separate that out, again, it's removing those belief systems that create illusions of limitations, internal illusions of limitations, and make them, oh, this is an external obstacle that I can navigate because I recognize it's not mine, it's outside of me. So that's one form of empowerment, I think. And then the other form is being able to access choice. And this is often what I mean, they're related, but like for me, empowerment really means choice. I have the power to choose. So when I know what's mine and what's not mine, then I know what my choices actually are in this moment, or what choices I want to build towards. Maybe I don't have that choice right now, but if I can make other choices in the present moment that move me toward the choices that I want to make, navigate around the obstacles that I have, then I can make more choices. And so that's how I think about empowerment. And honestly, that was one of the biggest aha moments that I ever had, that I always kind of come back to. I think, so often people talk about like the thing that changed their life, this situation, this event happened, and then I was changed. And most of the time, yeah, okay, there might have been like a big moment, but that thing by itself didn't change you. It was all these other little micro decisions, and you may not have like actually changed in that moment. It might have been that was a catalyst moment that moved. But I've always kind of struggled with, when talking about entrepreneurship and telling our story and stuff, I'm like, I didn't have a car accident where I lost the use of my legs for a period of time. And I told the doctor, well, I'm going to use my legs. I didn't have any of those moments that like I claimed my power and changed my life. I don't have that.
Yeah.
What I have are lots of little decisions that I made that I can see moved me to where I am. The one big moment of that stands out for me is the moment where I realized I had that.
That's that moment of agency.
The moment. Yes. I love that. Ooh, that's such a great term. Yes. My moment of agency. Yeah. I realized, and I was listening to an Amy Mann song from the Magnolia soundtrack, which is full of that processing of like victimization, right? Like there's a song called Save Me from the ranks of the freaks that suspect they could never love anyone. And, so I was listening to that album, and I was like, I always really resonated with it since it came out when I was in college. I was like, yeah. And then I was driving and I was listening to the album. I was like, I do not want to resonate with this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel this way. I want to have agency. I want to be in charge of my life. And that was the moment where I was like, I remember having this whole conversation with myself of like, I want to make choices, and I might make the wrong choices, and then I just make a different choice. But if I make the choice, then I can make a different choice. If I don't believe that I made the choice, then I'm at the mercy of the non-choice that I made, and it just kind of spirals. And this was primarily in relation to relationships, like romantic relationships. And it was just, okay, I'm going to start deciding. And I'm a fan of like, you could choose not to choose. But as long as you know you're choosing not to choose and let somebody else choose, you still have agency because you still own that choice. And interestingly enough, within all of that was shortly after that moment when I met my husband. Well, like we had met before, but like we actually like connected and we're like, oh, you're cool. And we've been married for 19 years. So something about that moment shifted something in me whereby, and in each step of that building of that relationship, I checked in with myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we went for a walk, and we were going to go like past, this is on a college campus, mind you. Like, so, and he's like invited me to come up to his place to watch a movie. And I was like, I know what happens here. I don't know what I want to do. So I'm going to take a rain check so I can think about it, so I can make a conscious choice. Because I know when I'm in that situation, I shut down. I check out. I don't make the decision. So I want to make sure that if I make that decision, that I'm choosing it and not choosing it.
Yeah.
And so that was ultimately the foundation for an amazing relationship that has now been like, from that moment was like 21 years or something wild like that. So
it's crazy when that time goes. Yeah. It's that, the two things. And then Louise, I want to kind of hear your take on this, is that it's that moment of agency, which it is a cataclysmic. Somebody say cataclysmic. Thank you. I don't know why I got tongue tied there. Cataclysmic moment, because it is a moment, but it's all the moments before it that gets you to that point, right? That moment of agency. Because that's an aha. You can't aha. And then there's the abdicating our sovereignty, right? When we choose, when we're in choice, when we are in agency, when we decide to abdicate it and say somebody else can make these decisions on my behalf. I don't want to make these decisions for whatever reason. They can be healthy reasons or not healthy reasons. It doesn't matter, but we're abdicating that. So it's like those two moments are what I'm hearing in there for you. Very cool.
Yeah. It's so deeply personal. Right? Like it's so deep, this self-awareness that comes with this word empowerment. I feel anyways, right? Like we deeply feel that we're in choice, that we have the agency to, you can say choose, not choose, but we're so aware. And that doesn't come, I don't know if that's an age thing. Like, did you think that that deep self-awareness comes just with like what, practice, age, wisdom? Like, how do we, because we started this conversation talking about our kiddos, like, is that even available to younger folks, that deep self-awareness, that they can be empowered and sit there deeply self-aware?
I think to a certain extent, yes. I think to the extent that we're talking from our purview, no, because it changes. You're talking about it's deeply personal. My take on it is that it changes over our lifetime. So for a 13, 14, 15, 18-year-old, it's going to look different to have personal agency, to have choice, than it does when you're 40, 30, 40, 50, 60. That looks very different. Right. So I think they can. And I think with that idea of kind of the leading question that I started with is, how do we guide? Because we do guide. We guide people to find that within themselves. And so I think we probably have done and are doing that with our own children as well. So they do have that ability at that age for in a limited capacity.
So I think that being able to make choices comes with like it evolves as we know ourselves, right? So I think that's part of what we think about with kids, is that they're learning about themselves, they're learning about their self-relationship, and they're learning about the world and their relationship to other people and the world, and also the systems of the world. And most of those systems, I think part of the reason it's such a big deal for us to come to that, and people in the older age bracket at this point, is most of us didn't have as much agency in our life as young people. And that's actually one of the things that I notice myself working with, is almost my responsibility as a parent is to kind of bat off the places where they are being conditioned to not have agency, being conditioned to not listen to themselves, to ignore their bodies. Like, I will give an example of, like, in school, they have like 15 minutes to eat lunch.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot listen to your body's needs when you have to eat that fast. You can't tell, am I full? You can't tell, did I eat enough food? Like, there's no time to notice. And especially because my younger son is a slow processor. So it takes him more time. We've actually had to work with him around slowing down eating so that he can check in, because he's like, this tastes good. He'll eat until he throws up if he's eating too fast. It's not because that's, he doesn't have a disorder. He's just moving too quickly. So within the structures of our society, there's so many layers to not trusting kids, not listening to them, not allowing them to make choices and to have agency. I know better. I have a broader perspective than you. I know better than you. I actually just found a book in the library that is, I think it's called About Sex or something. And it's a graphic novel. I picked it up for my 5th grader because the kids are getting exposed.
Oh, I know which one you're talking
stuff.
about.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. We had that one. Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. And I was like, the kids are getting exposed to this stuff because they have access to the internet. And there are lots of studies that are showing, and I'm hearing it, of the kinds of conversations. I'm blessed that I have kids that talk to me about everything. And so I have an awareness around what are the kids saying. And a lot of times they're talking about things that they don't have a context for, they don't have an understanding about. And unfortunately, it's coming into this place of all of our stuff around that topic and around bodies. And I love this book and its approach because it lays the foundation initially of bodily autonomy. And the idea is that when we're talking about, our bodies and sex go hand in hand. They're all together. And it's saying, we talk about, sex words. We're talking about body parts and we're talking about acts, but we need a better vocabulary for that. And it starts with things like trust, respect, power, justice, choice. And I'm like, this is amazing. And my 5th grader he's wanted me to read it to him. And I think we actually have to look at like how his eyes are like behavioral, I forget what it's called, optometry or something, like to understand how but part of what he likes about it is it's giving a framework for him to be able to ask questions that he wouldn't know to ask otherwise, or think to ask otherwise, or in that moment when it's available to have those conversations. So I think, Louise, to your point about like, do they have the ability to do this? I think some of it is we have to create the container for them to understand what they have the ability to do, because they don't know. And if we're not setting that container as parents who want them to be able to own their power and feel empowered, then that container is going to get set by peers. It's going to be set by systems that they have to operate in, especially if they're going to a public school. But a lot of schools are like that too, with the authoritarian kind of mindset of like, you're a kid, you don't know any better. And so helping them be able to know, hey, you can make a choice here. What does it look like? Asking questions like Kim was saying of like, what does that look like to you? You have this and you have this. What do you feel like would work best? What does your body say to you about this right now? We'll ask at the dinner table instead of body shaming. It's like, yo, you've been eating too much. Hey, slow down for a sec. Let me check in. Let's take a minute and have a conversation. And then you can check in and see what's going on for you. How is your body feeling? Does it need more food? And trusting, because honestly, growth spurts happen. Kids need to eat like way more food than I could possibly imagine is a healthy amount, but they're in a growth spurt. But I can't tell that. They know more about their bodies than I do. They know more about what works for them and what their needs are than I do, than anybody else does. And that's another thing I love about this book is it really affirms like there are going to be people who try and control things for you. And sometimes you don't have a choice because that's what it is. I don't have a choice that the lunch is 15 minutes. And you can know that that's having an impact on you and make different choices in different spaces, like at the dinner table where we have more time.
Well, and I think even within that idea of, right, you have 15 minutes and you have to eat in this period of time, what choices do you make during that period of time? Right. And so that's one of the things. So from the age of 1 until 5th grade, Izzy was in a Montessori school, and I worked in that Montessori school. And so being there really was a gift that we didn't even understand its full benefit, because I was seeing hundreds of kids every day of all different ages being asked their choice. What is their choice? Right? There's the whole concept of follow the child is this idea that children do have the capacity for personal agency. Again, in a limited context, but as adults, our role is to create an environment which allows them the maximum capacity that is right for that age and for that individual to make the choices. And I think we also get to do that as adults with other adults, right? I think we all do that. And Louise, I know you do this tremendously with your clients, is this idea of creating the container for them to realize, not just recognize, but realize their agency.
Yeah, we're talking about kiddos and preteens and all of that, and we're talking about adults too, yeah. All over the place, right? Like this is something that I do talk a lot about, is because like we feel like we give our power away over and over and over again to the place that employs us so much. And it's these same things that we're talking about, right? It's these same thoughts. It's these same traumas that we have carried with us, these same unrealistic expectations that society has put on us that we carry as definite facts when they're not facts at all. And we get all mixed up in all of these things, and we lose that sense of autonomy and agency, and we don't feel empowered to make decisions because we're stuck in this structure that dictates when we take coffee breaks and when we take lunch and what our work hours look like and all of those things. And yet when we can reclaim that, when we can pull it back in and know where it is that we have choice. Like, Valerie, I love that you're talking about, right? Like, let's just be really aware, like, this is us, this is our shit, and that's somebody else's stuff, right? And that takes practice as an adult when we haven't had great parents like us.
Well, and to
right?
that idea of like, part of what is going on is we not only haven't been given the awareness that there are choices, we've been gaslit to think that these are the best choices.
Yeah.
Like, not only aren't they choices, but if we're having a problem with the way it is, something is wrong with us. So like this idea that like the norms of our society, if you can't conform to them, then it's a you problem. It's not actually, these norms don't work for everybody. They shouldn't really be norms because they're only norms for some people and not all people. And we should have more choice. We need to have more room for decisions that fit us better so that we can show up to do the things. And that's something that I see so often when I'm working with people who've come out of corporate. They have all these patterns. They're like, I was burning out in corporate, and that's why I left and started my own business. And now I'm burning out again. Why? And it's like, well, because there are so many things that were normalized for you that you didn't realize were choices. Or even if you did, you learned to label them as bad, like taking naps.
Right.
You shouldn't have to take naps. Okay. Well, my body says
my body says otherwise.
My body says otherwise. But then we're taught, well, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and particularly again, as we show up in these bodies that are presenting as women, we clearly don't know what we're talking about.
Right.
We clearly couldn't possibly know what we want, what we need, because we are not capable of that type of knowledge. And whether or not we heard that directly during our lifetimes, the healing of the generations behind us has not been completed. And so we are bringing that forward into our lifetime and therefore also pushing it forward into future generations, both for, right, our sons, our daughters, and are theys, like all of our children.
Yeah. Well,
It's
it's
all
the
getting pushed
places
forward.
that we don't even think to question. Right? Those places where we don't think, when we're talking about creating containers for our kids to make decisions in age appropriate ways, to be able to go, oh, this is something to question. This is something I should, show up to my kids' school's board meeting and ask about it. Hey, is there another option here? Like, if you don't know to advocate, if you don't know that there's another choice that could be explored, then you don't advocate. You don't show up. You don't question. You don't have those conversations. You don't invite a different way of thinking about things. And I would say that at least in the US, you absolutely have been exposed to the you don't know about yourself well enough, because you go to the doctor, and if most people have had at least one doctor who told you that you were wrong about your body.
Yeah.
And that they knew better than you did. So we get that message everywhere. And I mean, and teachers too. I had to have a conversation with one of my son's teachers who told him, who was adamant that my kid was laughing at him when my kid was embarrassed. And my kid said, I was embarrassed. He's like, no, I saw you. You were laughing at me.
That's my physical response to embarrassment.
Right, exactly. But there's been I've had to have lots of conversations about you're imposing a perception around his intent. You can talk to him about the impact of what his actions were, but you don't know what's in his head. And if he's telling you this is what's in his head, then talk to him about the impact. Stop trying to tell him that what's happening inside of him is what's happening inside of him.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. So I want to continue this conversation for like another 3 hours because it's so juicy and we have only pulled on like one thread, let alone all the others that I want to pull on. But in honor of our listeners, we will say we will have another conversation. We will have Valerie back to continue to pull on these threads. What are the takeaways? What are the things that we've each heard today that we want to take home for ourselves, but also that we want to kind of underline for our listeners?
I want to jump in because we didn't use this word, I think, more than a handful of times today. And I think it's really key. And that's the word curiosity. Mm-hmm. I think there's so much power in being curious. And, you know, we all talked about it in different ways. But when we can grab hold of that word and figure out what that means to us and how do we show up in the world more curious, asking more questions, not assuming that norms are norms or that we know that we're understood or we're understanding, all of those things, I think is just like, that's my nugget that I got out of today, because I started to get goosebumps because it's like, yes, curiosity is a superpower we just don't talk enough about.
Said the true questioner.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of curiosity. I think I've heard, curiosity is the opposite of judgment. Like, you can't be judgmental and curious at the same time. And I think of these things as tools that we use, and what is the tool that is appropriate to use in this situation that's going to be helpful for me. And so part of it that I think about is, when we were talking about this container, like holding the container for our kids' curiosity about themselves as they grow, as they learn, as they explore what choices they can make, instead of judging and shutting down their choices, to hold that container. And then when it comes to modeling it in myself of asking those questions. And where the judgment may come in and be useful is an advocacy of, if you are trying to shut down that container that I'm trying to create for my kid, then I'm going to come up and advocate for that space. I'm going to hold that space. And so that's the other piece of that. There's the empowerment of the individual to allow and hold space for their curiosity of themselves and their world and understanding and growing, whether they're a kid or an adult, unlearning all of the things that we've learned. And then there's the empowering by holding that space against the systems that would try and take it away.
Yeah. And I really want to underline this idea of the systems, right? We are not disempowered as individuals by being in the world. We are disempowered by systems. We are disempowered by belief systems, processes, organizations, governments, right? I keep going. We are disempowered because those things exist, and the belief or the understanding or the a quote unquote agreement that we've made as a community that that's the way it is. We are disempowered. We become disempowered when we believe that that is the only quote unquote choice that we have. And we can reclaim our power when we step out of systems, when we question, when we have curiosity, but when we step out of them and say, what is my part? Who am I? What is important to me? Where can I find a little bit more choice? Where can I take a little bit more choice? But I want to underline the fact that there are systems in place that affect all of us and create this feeling of disempowerment that so many people have.
And I want to say really quick to that point, because I mentioned teachers and doctors who can also be amazing and be people who help hold that container of curiosity and empowerment. So I want to make sure, because there's a lot of pressure against teachers. And so I want to be clear about that. And I think that the more you are in the system, like your livelihood is reliant upon a system, which all of us to a certain extent are, but like when you own your own business or when you're in a particular system that has structures that impose obstacles upon people, like the medical system, healthcare system, education system, it takes even more effort on the part of the people who are working in the system to hold that system back. And it's very easy for it to kind of take over because they will threaten you. It's not pleasant to be in there either, because I've watched the system pit the people who are trying to do good work in the system against the people who are utilizing that system in order to uphold the system.
Well, when I was a practicing attorney, it's why I left the practice of law, not because I didn't enjoy the practice of law, but because I was advocating, right, in this space of empowerment, choice, agency, sovereignty, and the system made it nearly impossible. It's also why I left being a nonprofit executive, because the systems within, right, the entire philanthropic system, but the people doing the work inside of it. So this is one thing that I hope people are hearing, is the people who are doing the work inside of it have a person-to-person connection in there and see where there can be opportunity for curiosity, for deeper conversation, for deeper understanding, because very often it's not the individuals, it's the systems that they're involved in that they don't maybe feel the empowerment to be able to move things forward in the way that we want. So I love, since I've been living up here in Canada, every time you call a government agency, it's like, there's this long message at the beginning that says bullying will not be accepted and you will not, and you will be fined and jailed and like all this stuff, like all these warnings. I imagine in the US, if we ever had that type of language on there, like the uproar that would happen. And yet it's a reminder, those messages are a reminder, these are people. They are not the system. So, yeah. All right, there. Wow, that was a big underline. I feel like a big ass underline there.
Exclamation mark.
Yeah. Got a little passionate. Valerie, where in the world can people find you if they want to connect with you? We will have all of your links below, but I would love to have you share into the world what's going on for you.
Absolutely. So my website is ValerieFriedlander.com, and Friedlander is like Friedlander, but it's pronounced Fried. I took my husband's name. My last name, my maiden name was Potter, which was way easier, but also really annoying. You can imagine why. So my website is ValerieFriedlander.com. You can find me on most socials at Unlimited Coach Val. And my podcast is called Unlimited. I didn't really think when I made that name about how many people might use that word in their podcast. So you probably will need to start typing in my name to find it. So Unlimited with Valerie, and you'll find it. And yeah, those are the good places to find me. And my podcast is on pretty much all the major podcasting platforms.
Louise,
Lovely.
what else? What am I forgetting?
I don't know. What are we forgetting? Nothing. Well, except that you can find us here over and over again. So make sure that you're following, liking, doing all of those things. And that helps others find us too.
All the good stuff. All the good stuff. Valerie, it has been an absolute joy, and I'm serious. Come back anytime. We would love to continue the conversation.
Likewise. This is great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, we will see you next time. And until then, continue to reclaim that power and be nice to people.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
And that's all for this week's episode of the Empowered and Embodied Show. We hope today's episode has sparked something within you. Remember, we're all on this journey together. If something did resonate with you today, why not share it with a friend who might need to hear it too? You can find us everywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. Your feedback not only helps others find the show, but also helps us understand what's most valuable to you. Until next time, be kind to yourself, stay curious, and remember, we're walking right alongside you. Thanks for being part of our community.